Welcome aboard, applicants, to the Big Bad Baby Bar Review. We're going to be looking at questions 2 through 4 of June 2019, the California Baby Bar. Okay, starting with question number 2. The call for question 2 reads as follows. Nate sued Ed for breach of contract, seeking $60,000 seeking $60,000. What argument would Nate make? What defenses could Ed reasonably raise? And what would be the likely outcome? Discuss. Right here, we should instantly be spotting our breach of contract. And what does that indicate to us? Absolutely right. This is contract law. And that's where we put down our shopping list or our checklist. Right here, we put down form. What is it? Third party rights. Now after that, we do perform, or we do contract, or conditions, covenants, and excuses, possibly discharge of duty, arguments, and then breach of contract and remedies. Now, why do we put this down? We put this down so that we can have a better handle on our facts in terms of our issues, so that when we're looking into those facts, we can see what the facts are trying to get us to drum up in our mind concerning an applicable issue. Okay, with that, let's read our question. Ed is elderly and is often forgetful. He owns a home on a large lot in a subdivision governed by extensive homeowners association regulations, HOA regulations. Nate lives next door and has a lawn care business. Nate drafted a contract stating that Nate will provide lawn care services to Ed for 5 years, with the full amount to be paid in advance at the time the contract is signed. Nate intended the amount to be for $100 per month and for a total of $6,000 due in advance. Unbeknownst to Nate, he had made a mistake when typing the contract, and it stated that the amount Ed was to pay was $1,000 per month with $60,000 due in advance. The contract contained a merger clause stating that written contract was intended as a complete and final expression of the parties. Nate knew that Ed drinks alcohol heavily every night, or every evening, and waited until 10 p.m. to bring the contract over to Ed. Ed was on the porch drinking a cocktail. When Ed asked for time to review the contract, Nate said that Ed had already orally agreed to hire Nate for lawn care services at $100 per month, and that the written contract simply memorialized their deal. In fact, their conversation never occurred. Ed was afraid that he may have entered into the oral contract with Nate but had forgotten about it due to a blackout, which he occasionally experienced. Nate also told Ed that if someone reported the poor condition of Ed's lawn care to the homeowners association, Ed could be liable for a large fine for a violation of association regulations. Frightened, Ed quickly signed the contract without reading it. Oh, greetings to you too. Without reading it, but subsequently refused to pay Nate. Now, Nate sued Ed for breach of contract, seeking $60,000. What arguments would Nate make? What defenses could Ed reasonably raise? And what would be the likely outcome discussed? Well, we now have our party versus party orientation. It's going to be Nate v. Ed. Now remember, if I wanted to read our CO2Q here, good. Nate sued Ed for breach of contract, seeking $60,000. Okay. Now, Nate v. Ed, we're wanting to look first. What is our applicable law? What law would govern our contract here? And I'm going to do some shorthand so that we can move a little more efficient and move quicker through our issues. Okay. Well, under formation, we're going to be looking to see about applicable law, contract formation issues, offer acceptance consideration, and then defenses, and possibly even looking into third party rights, which we don't have any here, so we can remove that right away. So we have form. Now, do we have performance related issues? It looks to me like we do. Duty breach, or no, sorry, I should say discharge of the duty to perform issues, possibly. Breach, absolutely. Remedies, absolutely. So this would be our go-to list for spotting our issues. Okay. Now, coming back here, what law is it that would govern our contract? Well, what is our contract concern? Services. Services are governed by what? Law. The common law. Absolutely. Now, after establishing that the law is the common law, we're going to be looking to see contract formation, okay? Contract formation requires the offer. Oh, offer. Was there an offer made? Well, looks to me like yes, Nate drafted a contract stating that Nate would provide lawn care services to Ed for 5 years with the full amount to be paid in advance at the time the contract was signed. Now, what is it we know in terms of what an offer requires? Intent to be bound, definite terms, communicated to an identified offeree. Okay, so was this communication intended by Nate to be an offer by him to Ed? Absolutely. Was there a sufficient amount of terms? Let's look and see. 5 years, that's time for performance. Subject matter, lawn care services. Parties, Nate and Ed. Price, we already know that Nate intended the amount for that it would be $100 per month for a total of $6,000 due in advance. And what would the subject matter be? I think we already talked about this. Lawn care services. And then quantity, 1 5-year service, okay? Now, so we have an offer. Was there any acceptance issues? Now, acceptance related issues. Did Ed accept the contract right away? Now, we look down here and we know that what did Ed do? Ed's frightened. Ed's quickly signed the contract without reading it, but subsequently refused to pay Nate. So he signed the contract. That would be technically a mirror image. There would be considered acceptance here, but remember that's not the whole story. We will have a defense's argument later. Now, consideration. Was there sufficient consideration? $6,000 or $100 per month, $6,000 total price in exchange for what? Nate providing Ed with lawn care services. Okay. Now, also down here under, now we're going to have the defense's argument. Now, does the statute of frauds applies here? Absolutely. Do we have a contract that by its terms cannot be completed within a year? Absolutely right. 5 years. The contract is for 5 years. Now, what does that mean then? The contract has to be in writing. Was it in writing? Let's look and see here. Nate drafted a contract. Well, drafted a contract sounds like writing to me. And then down here, the written contract, even evidence the fact that it's a written contract right here. Okay, so we have the statute of frauds writing requirement, but does it contain a signature by Ed? Quickly sign the contract. Absolutely, there's a signature of Ed. So we have the statute of frauds 1 year, 1 year rule type of contract that by its terms cannot be completed within 1 year. What additional defenses do we have that Ed might bring up? Well, we have possibly what? Maybe a mistake. Now, mistake can be both unilateral and bilateral mistake. Now, or mutual mistake, excuse me. And what would Ed probably say here? Was it a unilateral mistake? Well, see, who is the truly mistaken one here? Nate, most likely, because the facts tell us that it was what? Unbeknownst to Nate, sounds like a mistake to me. He had made a mistake when typing the contract, and it stated the amount to be paid was $1,000 per month with $60,000 due in advance. Well, this sounds to me like we have Nate being mistaken. It doesn't sound like Ed is mistaken. Ed signed the contract. Okay, so we most likely have a unilateral mistake. Well, a unilateral mistake. Let's put a U mistake there. What we have is the only time that's an effective defense is when the other party knew or should have known of the mistake, or I should say, put it this way, the other party knew or should have known of the mistake that the other party made. Well, Ed does not know that Nate is mistaken. So this, even though it's an argument, may not provide a defense. Now, moving onward here, is there possibly a duress argument here? Okay, well, let's take a look. Frightened, Ed quickly signed the contract without reading it. Sounds to me like he could have. He could be. Why? Because Ed has he had so let's come back up here. Ed was afraid that he might have entered into a contract, so there's a fear factor there with Nate, but I'd forgotten about it due to what? Ed often had these blackouts, and also too we could let me just as to the duress, did the fact that Ed was forgetful and had forgotten about it due to Ed's blackout, would that have caused? Okay, Scrivener's error. That's exactly right. We're going to bring that up under the parole evidence rule. Possibly duress, but you can see how we're working through this. But may or may not be a valid defense. Maybe just a weak argument at best. Okay, now down here under undue influence. How can we argue undue influence here? Well, Nate knew that Ed drinks heavily every evening, I should say, and waited. That's right. Reformation of the contract. That's exactly what we're going to be looking at here under the parole evidence rule. We're going to be looking to see was there a mistake, and if it's a mistake is an exception to the parole evidence rule, keeping out oral or written communications prior or contemporaneous. But remember, where are these facts indicating that we're dealing with the parole evidence rule? Absolutely, the merger clause right here. And remember, the thing about the merger clause is that it indicates what? That the contract is a fully integrated agreement between the parties. That's right. Why unilateral mistake? Unilateral mistake because nothing in the facts indicates that Ed was mistaken. The only mistake was unbeknownst to Nate. Now, I also raised too that Nate came over to Ed's house, just on and off this for a minute again, and it doesn't indicate that Nate knew that Ed was afraid that he may have entered into the oral contract with Nate, but had forgotten about it due to a blackout, which he occasionally experienced. So there's nothing here that indicates that. Okay, how does that affect the formation? Well, see, these are defenses that Ed might bring against Nate, and that's why we're bringing these up here. Unilateral mistake, which again only Nate's mistaken. Duress, at best, I just don't see that that's a strong defense. Undue influence, possibly because Nate knew that Ed drinks heavily every evening and waited until the time 10 p.m. when Ed might be drinking heavily, and then what unbeknownst, it wasn't unbeknownst here. Yeah, Ed was on the porch drinking a cocktail. Absolutely. So we have undue influence possibly by Nate. Now the other one is to formation. That's exactly right. They are defenses to formation. That's exactly right. And then we also want to throw in incapacity. Well, the one thing about incapacity that we're going to be looking at is twofold. Ed is elderly and often forgetful, and down here that when Ed contracted with Nate, Ed was drinking heavily. He was on his porch drinking a cocktail. Now, let's see, the other factor is, let's see, okay, yeah, this is the other thing too about the conversation between the parties. In fact, the conversation that Nate was talking about, now this is why I say duress may or may not be an argument. I want to put another defense here with that too. Late at night, exactly. I want to put a misrep fraud argument that Ed might bring up. Why? Because here's what Nate told Ed. See what you think about this. Nate said that Ed had already orally agreed to hire Nate for lawn care services at $100 per month, and that the written contract simply memorialized their deal. In fact, that conversation never occurred. Ed was afraid that he may have entered into the oral contract with Nate, but had forgotten about it due to a blackout, which he occasionally experienced. Now, remember, Nate then used this relationship, that neighborly relationship that he had with Ed, and used that when he told when Nate told Ed that if someone reported the poor condition of Ed's lawn to the homeowner association, Ed could be liable for a large fine for a violation of association regulations. Also, who does business at 10? Exactly. Who does business at 10 p.m.? Absolutely. That is incredible argument there. Yeah. Possibly duress argument, possibly misrep argument, possibly undue influence argument, and then incapacity also. And then we wanted to make sure when we talk about parole evidence rule, we're going to bring up reformation. We want to reform the contract back to the original $6,000 intended price for the amount to be paid in advance for the 5 years of lawn care service. Okay, and then down here, do we have anything in terms of okay? Do we have an anticipatory repudiation argument? Possibly. Do we have any breach argument down here? In other words, is there? Okay, first of all, before we go through this, is there a condition argument? In other words, do we have a condition precedent argument? It's possible. Why? Because who is supposed to perform? What was the condition that each party, or the duty that each party was to provide for the other? Nate was to provide Ed with lawn care services. Ed was to pay Nate the $6,000 in advance for the 5 years of lawn care service. Okay, but was there any kind of condition that was in between either one? Well, it doesn't really look like that, but we may still have that condition precedent that we just talked about a few minutes, or just a few seconds ago. Do we have any excuses, or do we have any excuse arguments here? Well, see, I don't see any, so I'm trying to think here if there is any. I don't see that. And the other one, no express conditions. Exactly right. No, right, exactly. No, we want to put express conditions. Very good, very good spot on that. Express conditions because they were in writing. And remember too, up here under parole evidence rule, the mistake argument that a contract that is drafted by, we'll say Nate here, is construed against Nate. Okay, in other words, it's interpreted against Nate and in the favor of Ed if there's any mistakes in the writing. Okay, so that's an argument you might want to put in there as well. Make sure to talk about express condition precedent. Okay, and then was there any arguments that Ed might bring up in terms of like an excuse or discharge of duty to perform, or Nate might bring up in terms of express or discharge duty to perform? I don't see any here. But the fact is that Ed subsequently refused to pay Nate, so we're going to roll right into anticipatory repudiation. And do we have a breach of contract? Breach of contract? Well, yeah, but how would we establish breach of contract? That would be through substantial performance. In other words, has any of the parties actually performed? It doesn't indicate that Nate has actually performed any lawn care service. It doesn't indicate that Ed has provided Nate any payment in advance. So it looks to me like a material breach. So we're rolling right into material total breach. We're rolling right into remedies. And under remedies, we want to make sure to bring up the duty to mitigate. In other words, Ed has the duty to mitigate, possibly if you can't, possibly finding a reasonably equivalent lawn care service as Nate, according to his HOA maybe agreement of it doesn't indicate. See, he owns it home on the lawn. HOA according to HOA regulations, I should say. Now, after he has effectively mitigated the damages, we're going to also look to see if there's any expectation damages on the part of who? Ed or Nate. Actually, it's Nate here. Did Nate have any expectation damages? Possibly the $6,000 contract price. Now, what about incidental damages, or I should say this consequential damages? And we want to make sure to bring up the case Hadley versus Baxendale. Special damages, consequential damages. Right here, I'll just put that in. And what is that going to be? Where if at the time of contracting, Nate or Ed foresaw any particular damage that that might be, we'll say, suffered by Nate as a result of the breach, are experienced by Nate as a result of the breach, those would be consequential damages. But I don't see that as recoverable for Nate. Does this contract go past formation issues? Yes, I see that as possibly breached. The reason why I say that is he subsequently refused to pay Nate. There was already a contract signed when he signed the contract, or contract made when he signed the contract, but that Ed subsequently refused to pay Nate anything, which indicated that there was an anticipatory repudiation of the agreement. And therefore, right after we talk about consequential damages, we want to make sure to bring in incidental damages, okay? And at that point, I think we're pretty much we can conclusion, and we're done. Yeah, I think there is not a contract at all. Well, see, that's the argument back and forth that would have been made on a full discussion. We're going to look to see if has the acceptance that Ed executed by quickly signing the contract, was that defeated by any of these defenses, the statute of frauds 1 year rule. Was it defeated by the unilateral mistake aspect? Was it defeated by possible duress? Was it defeated by misrepresentation fraud, by possibly using a fact, or Nate telling Ed something that didn't actually happen, and then undue influence, possibly unconscionability there as well, by Nate knowing that Ed was Ed excuse me, Ed would be drinking heavily every evening and waited till 10 a.m. And who does business at 10 p.m.? Who does business at 10 p.m. to bring a contract over to somebody to sign? That sounds a whole lot like a undue influence, possibly unconscionability. And then incapacity, we have Ed, who is elderly and often forgetful, and the fact that at the time he signed this contract, he had just drank a cocktail, or he was just drinking a cocktail. So, you got a lot of different arguments here. Also, the parole evidence rule mistake argument, parole evidence rule that Nate would probably look to the merger clause, Ed would be looking to the mistake aspect. He says, because Nate would want the merger clause so you could stick to the 60,000. Obviously, you got, but the problem is I should say this. His argument fails for this because Ed could bring up the exception of mistake and be able to reform the contract to the original contracting intent of the parties for the agreement to be $6,000 in advance for the 5 years of lawn care services provided by Nate's lawn care service business. And then down here there was we briefly mentioned the condition precedent and what a condition is, and then it's established that there was an express condition and indicate what that was. It was lawn care for money and money for lawn care. And then down here, anticipatory repudiation, clearly seen Ed subsequently refused to pay Nate. Breach of contract, was there a substantial performance? In other words, by measuring the breach of contract, was it material total breach? Absolutely, because neither party has actually performed or received any kind of benefit from the contract. What are the form of remedies that we can be looking to? Well, first of all, Ed has a duty to mitigate the damages. Also, there is I should say this. Yeah, Ed has a duty to mitigate damages. Would there be any expectation damages suffered by Nate? I should say, excuse moi here. We have a duty to mitigate by Nate. I might have swapped the parties around there. My apologies. Also, what would be the damages that Nate might be able to recover against Ed? Might be the $6,000 contract price profit that he would have received under the 5-year contract with Ed. The consequential damages, Hadley versus Baxendale argument, I don't think it's going to work, but you want to make sure to bring it up anyway. The other one is incidental damages. Any particular damages that Nate might be able to recover in mitigating the damages would be recoverable under incidental damages, and then we conclude. And that's essay question number 2. One must write this essay as if there is a contract, right? That's a good way of looking at it. Yeah, you could look at it like that. So now rolling into the next essay, we have question number 3. So we first go to our game plan. And our game plan always starts with, exactly right, our call to question COTQ. So let's go to there. Now, what crimes or crimes can Ben reasonably be charged, and what defenses, if any, may he reasonably raise, and what is the likely result? So looking here, right off the button, or right off into in our COTQ, we have the crime or crimes. Okay, crime or crimes indicates criminal law. Absolutely right. So let's put down our criminal law shopping list up here, right here. So we got murder, structure, theft, crimes against the person, solicitation, /conspiracy, attempt, and defenses. Make sure to put in any checklist or shopping list that you have memorized here. Okay, now reading our question. Ava, or actually, excuse me, let me come down here and what crimes or crimes can Ben reasonably be charged? What defense, if any, can reasonably raise? What is the likely result? So we got crimes and defenses. We want to make sure to answer our question. Crimes and defenses of Ben, question mark, State v. Ben. Okay, now we'll go right now in. Okay. Ava used to work as a daytime house cleaner for Claire, who had terminated Ava's relationship, or excuse me, employment. Ava decided to go to Claire's house the following Saturday, when she thought Claire would be at her weekly book club meeting, and to take 2 large paintings worth several $1,000s and to sell them. Ava told Ben of her plan and offered to pay him 1/3 of the proceeds from the sale of the paintings if Ben gave her a ride and helped her load the paintings into his van. Ben said he needed to think it over. Shortly after sunset on Saturday night, Ben picked up Ava and they drove in his van to Claire's house. Ava used a copy she had made of a key that Claire had given her to open the locked front door. Claire was sick with the flu and had decided not to go to her book club meeting. Claire walked into her living room just as Ava and Ben were taking down the first painting. Claire suffered from a serious heart attack or heart condition. Claire screamed when she saw Ava and Ben had a heart attack, collapsed, and died. Ben, not realizing that Claire had died, told Ava that he was through doing jobs with her and used his cell phone to call an ambulance. After Ben hung up the phone, Ava ran out without the paintings, but saw Claire's diamond watch on a table, grabbed it, and took it with her as she fled. So let's start back up here now that we've have the big picture perspective. Ava used to work as a daytime house cleaner for Claire, who had terminated Ava's employment. Any particular issues there? Doesn't look like it. Maybe just foundational facts. Ava decided to go to Claire's house the following Saturday when she thought Claire would be at her weekly book club meeting and to take 2 large paintings worth several $1,000s and to sell them. Now, this here indicates the particular target crime in question, which would be, we want to make sure to note that it'd be burglary. We want to make sure to talk about the common law, modern law distinctions, and then what did she intend to do within the structure itself? A larceny. Okay, now, and take 2 paintings worth several $1,000s and to sell them. Yeah, okay, this is a good one, exactly. Now, Ava told Ben of her plan and offered to pay him 1/3 of the proceeds. Wait a minute here. That sounds to me like we got ourselves a conspiracy here. Now, right at this point, we want to make sure too that we're talking about, like, because here, remember, it's Ben. We want to make sure though that we don't want to talk about solicitation because that would have been for Ava. Ben has a conspiracy. So we got to look to see what did he actually accept. Okay, if Ben gave her a ride and helped her load the paintings into his van, Ben said he needed to think it over. Okay, see, has he actually indicated an agreement yet? Not yet, but right into the second paragraph. Let's take a look. Shortly after sunset on Saturday night, Ben picked Ava up and they drove in his van to Claire's house. Voila, there's your implied agreement. Now, was there any overt act in furtherances? Absolutely. Ben picking Ava up and driving in his van to Claire's house. Okay. Okay, yes, so we have a conspiracy here. What else do we have? Major issue. We have a Pinkerton's rule to look at. In other words, any actions taken by Ava in reasonable furtherance of the criminal objective would be allocatable to Ben. Otherwise, yeah, that down here we also have accomplice liability. Why? Well, accomplice liability for Ben. Why? Because he was an aider and abetter. Plus, he intended that the crime be committed. How do we know this? Well, first of all, he picked Ava up, and he and he went with Ava even into Claire's house to help Ava carry out the crime. So there's like twofold there that would indicate his intent that the crime be committed. Oh, accessory or not? That's exactly right. We're going to throw in accessory before the fact. We have he is an accessory before the fact because the crime hasn't even been committed yet, and he's helping her get to the location that Ava and him are going to carry out the crime. So, okay, so now here we're looking at we've actually talked all the way through our vicarious liability or solicitation conspiracy issues. Now we're going to be going into it. We're going to be looking at was there a burglary within the structure itself, and this is where we want to make sure to talk about the common law modern law distinction for burglary. And after we talk about burglary, we got to look to see what was there a completed larceny. So that's the aspect here. Right here, this fact. Ava used a copy she had made of a key that Claire had given her to open the locked front door, still part of the burglary. Claire was sick with the flu and had decided not to go not to go to her book club meeting. So let's see. What about the key? The key is how you get the break and entering. That's how they were able to get into Claire's house. Now Claire was sick with the flu though, and I decided not to go to her book club meeting. What does that go to? Well, that'll be something later with impossibility. And it's factual impossibility, okay? Rather than legal impossibility. But we'll talk about that in a later moment. Now, Claire suffered from a serious heart condition. Again, this is actually something concerning Claire. When Claire died, her pre-existing heart condition right here. Claire. Okay, where is that here? Claire was sick with the flu, and Claire walked in just as. Okay. I want to make sure with the. I think I read right by it. Okay, here. Ava used a copy she had made of the key that Claire had given her to open the locked front door. Claire was sick with the flu and had decided not to go to her book club meeting. Claire walked in the living room just as Ava and Ben were taking down the first painting. Claire suffered from a serious heart condition. Here it is, right here. I want to make sure to bring this out. This is actually. I want to make sure my change the color on that to that one. Okay, that actually is a pre-existing condition of the victim, and that goes to thin skull plaintiff rule. So we want to make sure that when we talk about the homicide of Claire, that we bring up that aspect. So right here, I want to make sure underneath here, right there, homicide of Claire, thin skull. Okay, and that would be under proximate cause. Let's see here. There it is. Okay, now, what about Claire coming in and walking into the living room just as Ava and Ben were taking down the first painting? Now, the first painting, what does that mean? Has the larceny been fully completed yet? Remember, they were the target objective was the target or the criminal objective of the conspiracy was to take how many paintings? 2 large paintings. So even though there's one large painting being taken down, that could indicate that we have an attempt. It's possible. We'll take a look at that here in just a minute. Claire screamed when she saw Ava and Ben had a heart attack and collapsed and died. So we have at that moment aggravated. I'd say an aggravated assault. Okay, and then oh yeah, that just because the yeah, exactly, and that's why I would say oh why because she well would a reasonable person in her position have reasonably apprehended, in other words, reasonably put in fear that they're reasonably put in fear of a harmful or offensive contact with Ava or Ben? It's possible because a reasonable person waking up, and it says here it's after sunset on Saturday night. So this is at late at night. Someone who had just woke up, who's not who was sick with the flu, is gonna have, and then also having a pre-existing heart condition. She's going to be more susceptible to being startled by criminal activity in her front room. I know you and I would as well. It says I only see common law assault. Yeah, you know what? I may have to come back on that and just say just assault on that one. That's more of that's a safer approach. So yeah, I would have to say assault. With excellent job on that. Now, up here under the larceny, I would say we have an attempted larceny. Okay, and I'll put it here. Oh yeah, excellent job. Okay, right here, and I want to make sure to throw in factual impossibility. Copy that, put that under here, because that's going to be a big ticket issue there. Okay, and we'll bring that up. Make sure to bring this up a little bit. Okay, now Ben, not realizing that Clara died, told Ava that he was through doing jobs with her and used his cell phone to call an ambulance. Now, at this point, what is it that his communication to Ava, Ben's communication to Ava, indicated? That possibly we have a withdrawal. Now, if we're just doing this by chronological order, we're looking at a withdrawal at this point right here. So I would say we could even throw in a withdrawal defense, although oftentimes withdrawal will actually trail your conspiracy argument. Okay, but in this point, I think because of the chronological order of our facts, we're going to be putting it right there. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And after Ben, now remember though, Ben didn't realize that Clara died yet, so he told Ava that he was through doing jobs with her. He used his cell phone to call an ambulance. After Ben hung up the phone, Ava ran out with the paintings. Okay, but saw Claire's diamond watch on a table, grabbed it, and took it with her as she fled. Now, at this point, I want to make sure before we go too far into withdrawal and we talk about the aspects concerning the result of Ben's withdrawal. We're looking to see withdrawal of the conspiracy, I should say. We're looking to see if that was larceny, an attempted larceny, or a full larceny. Well, that's where I'm just going to say we probably should throw in a discussion for both. I'm not really sure because attempted. Okay, I agree with you too. Sometimes you just have to maybe exactly. It's possible. It's an arguable issue. So what I'll do is I'll just throw in parentheses here a larceny. We're not really sure. It's possible. Yeah, okay. Now down here we're going to be looking at the withdrawal. Now looking at an issue for a small discussion. Precisely, exactly. Now, when Ben, when he told Ava that he was done, he was through doing jobs with her right here. What did that effectively do? Well, according to, this is where we have another common law, common law and modern law distinction. Under the common law, his telling Ava that he was through doing jobs with her would have terminated at that point any further liability for future crimes. Future crimes being that the theft of Claire's diamond watch. Now, if Ben has effectively withdrew under the common law, Ben is not on the hook for Ava's activity concerning Claire's diamond watch, or Ava's theft of Claire's diamond watch. However, under the modern law, which is the Model Penal Code, we're looking to see, has not only Ben talked to Ava, renunciated with his intent to continue criminal activity. Yeah, he did all three elements of withdrawal. Well, the only thing is he did maybe not. He didn't thwart the crime. That's what I'm saying. The argument could be made that by the state that he didn't actually thwart the crime. Why? Because right here, after Ben hung up, look, Ava ran out with the paintings. So it isn't. I don't know if he completely thwarted the crime, but it's arguable. Well, like I said, it's a discussable issue. Now, if indeed he has, let's say he renunciated, but he didn't thwart the crime, he would still be on the hook for what? The larceny, and it would be an additional larceny for the diamond watch. I'll say DW here, Claire's diamond watch. Okay, so that's why if we argue the common law, this would practically be where Ben's discussion would end. But if the modern law, Model Penal Code rule prevails, then we would have an additional discussion for the larceny of Claire's diamond watch by Ava. Okay. Now, this is also where we want to throw in a conclusion. Yeah, without the paintings, exactly. It's just that would be simply for the diamond watch, the paintings, the homicide of Claire, the assault, the burglary. That would all be Ben would all be chargeable with that. Ben would be chargeable with that. So with that, we're going to conclude that essay, and we're going to go to essay number 4. Now going to sticking with our game plan, we're going to start with the call of the question. What arguments will Pete make in support of his claim? What defenses will Grills assert? And what is the likely outcome of the case, including the amount of damages, if any, Pete can expect if his claim succeeds? Discussed. Now, we really don't at this point claim. We don't know if it's a tort claim or a contract claim. That's why we have to peek up at that last paragraph and see breach of contract. There it is. Okay, so we have what does breach of contract tell us? We have contract law as our governing, or as our law area of law, and make sure it comes down here. There we go. Want to make sure now we put down our shopping list. So we got formation, third party rights. Then we have performance, conditions, covenants, excuses. We have discharge of duty to perform. We have breach of contract, and we have remedies. Now we can read our facts and be able to issue spot everything we need to. Yeah, this one here is a killer essay. Yeah. Pete, a retired professional football player, signed a 1-year contract effective January 1st with Grills to promote his cooking grills. Grills also signed and promised to pay Pete $50,000 per month. Pete promised to act in 6 commercials for Grills, filming at times mutually agreed upon by the parties. Pete also promised to make 2 promotional appearances every month. The contract contained the following provision, paragraph 6. If Pete engages in disreputable conduct that reflects adversely on Grills or its association with Pete, Grills at its opinion or its option may terminate this agreement. Pete acted in 2 commercials from January to May and attended all appearances. In June, Pete did not show up for the filming for the 3rd commercial because he had overslept. Pete offered to pay the cost of the film crew and said he'd be available anytime Grills wished to reschedule. Pete was on time for the next 2 appearances and received his June check. In July, Pete was the subject of stories in magazines and sports programs, which included Photographs of him at the roulette table at casino with a drink in his hand, looking quite intoxicated, hanging on to people to keep from falling down. The news stories were more humorous than critical. 2 days later, Grills emailed Pete stating that his contract had been terminated due to the breach of your obligations with respect to television commercials and because Grills is invoking paragraph 6 based on your conduct at casino documented in news stories in July. Pete believes the real reason Grills terminated his deal was because Grills' sales were down. Pete's advertising expert was surprised by the termination because news stories like this one Grills complained of are common and have little negative effect on companies that hire athletes to promote their products. From August through December, Pete promoted products for other companies earning $100,000. He turned down a similar offer of $250,000 from Casino because his concerns it would reinforce a negative public image. Pete's agent told him that being dropped by Grills will reduce Pete's future promotional opportunities. Pete sued Grills for breach of contract. So, Pete is the one that's suing Grills. Okay. Now, under here, what is our area of law? Or excuse me, our area of law. What is our governing law? Well, we're looking to see he signed a 1-year contract to do what? Promote cooking grills. So we looked at common law because that's most likely going to be services. Now, contract formation. Let's see here. Do we have a validly enforceable contract situation here? Now let's take a look. A retired professional football player signed a 1-year contract. Okay, effective January 1st with Grills to promote his cooking grills. Right here, we have possibly the enforceable contract situation. Now, if that's the case, we want to make sure to put in mutual assent. We want to make sure to talk about our terms. We want to make sure to bring up a small discussion of statute of frauds, possibly the 1-year rule, possibly. So it depends, but it's already in. I believe it's in writing here. If I'm reading it right, signed a 1-year contract. So technically, it very well could be in writing because the paragraph 6 is presumptively in writing as well. So okay, the statute of frauds would be satisfied. Now moving down to do we have any third-party rights? Doesn't look like we have a third party here. So we can remove that from our list. Down here, what about the mirror image rule? Now, that's exactly right. We're going to look to see, maybe instead of, see, mutual assent is offer and acceptance. That's why I threw that in there. But you're right. We could look at the mirror image rule for the common law. And we'll throw that in there. Excellent spot on that one. Make sure to put in your terms, though, in a small statute of frauds discussion. Now, under performance, the performance stage, conditions, covenants, and excuses. What is it we have here concerning, let's see here, the promise to make 2 promotional appearances every month. The contract, okay, the contract, this paragraph 6 here indicates to us that we have a parole evidence rule situation. Now, in a parole evidence rule, we talked about that right, illusory term in paragraph 6, if Pete engages in, well, that's, I think you could argue that. Well, how would it be illusory? Yeah, I think you could argue that. Yeah. Illusory. Yeah. Possibly the defense of illusory. Yeah. Exactly. Illusory consideration. Okay, illusory contract, exactly right. Okay. Okay, so the parole evidence rule, prior or okay, at their discretion. That's exactly right. So that I'll even put that in there here. At its opinion may terminate the agreement. Very good spot on that one. It's illusory contract. Very good defense spot on that one. Now, after talking about that one, we have the parole evidence rule. Now, at the parole evidence rule, we're looking to see was there a merger clause? Doesn't look like there's one. Yeah, happy to answer. Yeah, absolutely. Was there a merger clause? Doesn't look like there's one. Was there any evidence in terms of the four corners approach that this was the fully integrated excuse me, intent of the parties? It's possible. But what is it that we can bring in even if it's fully integrated? Well, you can bring in through the exceptions to the pro evidence rule evidence that indicates maybe a condition precedent, and maybe there, yeah. Well, why would you say no pro evidence? See, that was the thing. I think it's a small discussion, but it helps to I think you're right. I'll put a question mark there, and I'll do that. It's a condition. There you go. Very good. Very good. Okay. We're looking to see what type of condition is this expressed. What type of express condition? I believe it was a condition precedent, and the condition, yeah, express condition precedent. And we got to look to see here when Pete did not show up for the filming for the third commercial because he had overslept. What would that technically be? And that, yeah, time. That's right. And satisfaction. Right. Right. Exactly. Then we're looking to see if he actually breached the contract. But what could he argue? That he offered to pay the cost of the film crew, and he said he'd be available anytime girls wished to reschedule. He was on time for the next two appearances and received his June check. He could potentially argue waiver, that there was a waiver of that initial breach. Yes, but they waived exactly. There was it. You're right on this, right on the quote unquote money there. In July, Pete was the subject of stories in magazines, sports programs, which included photographs of him at the roulette table at casino with a drink in his hand, looking quite intoxicated and hanging on to people to keep from falling down. Now, the news stories were more humorous than critical. 2 days later, Grills emailed Pete stating that his contract had been terminated. Now, that one there is possibly not maybe just repudiation, but a breach. That's the breach there. And his contract had been terminated due to the breach of obligations with respect to television commercials, and this is the aspect about substantial performance. Right. How does that work? So that we're looking to see the amount of performance actually rendered, the amount of expectation received, the amount whether or not the defendant did not perform in, let's say, bad faith, whether or not the defendant his drunken action, whether or not the defendant stands willing, ready, and able to cure, and whether or not time was of the essence. And those are factors that you weigh to establish a substantial performance to determine if the breach of contract was a material, a partial, or a minor breach. Now at this point, we're then going to slide right into possibly remedies. Now, I don't want to forget something too. Down here under that here it is. And because Grills is invoking paragraph 6 based on your conduct at casino documented in news stories in July, so that's them laying out the aspect that possibly that could be going to the parole evidence rule, sitch, possibly. Pete believes the real reason Grills terminated his deal was because Grills' sales were down. Okay. Pete's advertising expert was surprised by the termination because news stories like this one Grills complain of are common and have little negative effect on companies that hire athletes to promote their products. In other words, what is it they might say at that point? In other words, in terms of their performance, or so whether or not the Pete actually substantially performed, we're going to be looking to possibly customs of the industry argument. Yeah, usage of trade, customs of the industry. That's exactly right. I'll put a / UOT. Very good. Now, under remedies, did Pete mitigate his damages? Take a look. Remember we talked to, let me come down here. Thank you for your patience with me. Okay, right here. Duty to mitigate. Okay, did he actually mitigate his damage? Now, from August through December, Pete promoted products for other companies earning $100,000. He turned down a similar offer of $250,000 from Casino because his concerns it would be because of his concerns it would reinforce a negative public image. Pete's agent told him that being dropped by Grills will reduce Pete's future promotional opportunities. Now remember, this aspect goes to his expectation damages here. But up here, this looks to me like all this here is duty to mitigate. Now down here, we talked about this expectation damages. I'll see right here. Okay, this is what he's going to be arguing in expectation, that his reduced future promotional opportunities was, Pete's agent told him that being dropped by Grills will reduce Pete's future promotional opportunities. We're going to look to see whether or not that's too speculative. If it's considered too speculative, it's it's an argument that that Grills could make, that hey, he turned down a $250,000 offer from Casino. Possibly the claim that future promotional opportunities were reduced maybe was not so as sound an argument that as Pete claims it to be, or Pete's agent claims it to be. The other one is consequential damages, which is the Hadley versus Baxendale argument. Did Grills know that Pete know, or I should say, yeah, did Grills know that when they terminated, or when they formed their contract with Pete, that if they terminated their contract with Pete, that Pete might suffer a economic harm as a consequence of the breach? Well, it doesn't indicate that up here at all, because it indicates that Pete promised to act as 6 commercials for Grills, filming at times mutually agreed upon by the parties. Also, he made 2 promotional appearances every month. Nothing indicates that Pete would suffer a consequential harm if Grills were to terminate the agreement, of the Pete-Grills agreement. Now, wouldn't the Casino refusal help out Grills? That's exactly right. You could argue that as well, that Casinos. Well, let me see. How do you see that? Because I'm trying to find an argument for that, and I'm coming up dry on that. What do you think? That indeed his behavior was bad? It's possible that he indeed breached his contract with them by not acting in what they called as a reputable conduct. Yeah, it's possible. It's a possible argument. Then that's what all these are, is possibly discussable arguments, and that's our job. Absolutely. When we go through these questions, that's just a thought, and that's great. Error on the side of inclusion, and make sure to show your work. Absolutely. Make sure if you have a thought like that, put it down on your paper. Absolutely. If you have an argument that has factual support, put it down. Absolutely. Now, incidental damages. Any particular cost related to Pete's mitigating his damages, that would also be recoverable by Pete. Now, want to make sure to conclude here. Conclusion. And I think that's, put it on the paper. Exactly right. Okay. Well, I think that pretty much sums up our, now this was more like a whirlwind issue spotting workshop of sorts. So I hope you had a great time, and I had a great time, and got a lot done, got a lot learned. Went through 3 incredible essays. One was definitely hard, and the second one not so much, but the third one, that was definitely like Big Daddy Storytime said, that was definitely a killer. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you for attending, and thank you so much for this. And uh, I wish you the best, and I wish you the best of luck on the bar exam. And I also want to put out a shout out to two things. One thing I want to put a shout out to is Chess Cruncher TV. Keep chess crunching, Chess Cruncher. You're incredible. And I also want to put a shout out to my Amazon Kindle book, the Battling the Big Bad Baby Bar Essay Basics. So again, thank you so much. Hope you had a great time with this workshop. And again, I wish you the best of luck and I wish you all the luck on the bar exam. Okay. Until the next podcast. Oh, and happy Halloween. Happy Halloween.